There is a brutal truth nobody says out loud because it ruins too many comforting lies. A lot of people do not fail because they are untalented. They fail because the world trains them to chase what was never meant to be chased. Approval, urgency, visibility, validation, faster results, louder proof. And while they are running harder, life quietly moves further away. Have you ever noticed that the people who look the most desperate for success almost never seem to hold it for long? They talk the most. They force the most. They post the most. They try to look unstoppable. But underneath it, there is panic. And panic has a smell. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. Even your own decisions start rotting under it. That is what this video is about. Because success is not always repelled by weakness. Sometimes it is repelled by the wrong energy. And before we go deeper, stay with me until the end, because the fifth secret is the one most people betray right before their life would have changed. It is the mistake that makes people abandon their own future while convincing themselves they are just being realistic. That part matters more than most people realize. Today, we are going to break this down through a Stoic lens, but not the soft, decorative version of Stoicism people quote online to sound wise. I mean the lived version. The kind that helps a person stand upright in a world built on performance, comparison, manipulation, noise, and quiet humiliation. We are going to talk about 5 shifts that change the way success responds to you. First, why chasing success often pushes it away. Second, how doubt quietly destroys your presence before life ever tests your ability. Third, why success stops trusting people whose actions betray their words. Fourth, how other people's opinions become a prison you decorate and call responsibility. And fifth, why the waiting period is not empty, not punishment, not proof that you missed your chance, but the season where your roots are either being built or abandoned. This is not a motivational speech. This is not empty positivity. This is not, just believe in yourself, packaged in old Roman quotes. This is for the person who has worked hard, stayed loyal, tried to do things right, and still feels like life keeps rewarding the wrong people. It is for the person who is tired of pretending they are patient when deep down they are exhausted. The person who wonders if they are behind. The person who looks calm on the outside but feels the pressure building underneath. The person who is starting to realize that the game they were taught to play may have been rigged from the beginning. Let's start there. A man walked into his boss's office one afternoon and quit his job. No backup plan. No savings worth bragging about. No certainty. No guarantee. No applause. Just a decision. Everyone around him thought he had lost his mind. His co-workers looked at him the way people always look at someone who breaks the script too early, like he had committed some private act of self-destruction. His family was afraid. A few people tried to be supportive, but even their support had that worried tone underneath it, the tone that says, "I hope this works because if it doesn't, this will be hard to explain." And if he had been completely honest in that moment, he would have admitted something most people never confess when they tell their comeback story. He was terrified. Not the dramatic kind of fear. Not the kind that makes you scream. The quieter kind. The kind that sits in your chest. The kind that follows you home. The kind that makes you stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m. and wonder whether you just ruined your own life in the name of freedom. He had worked in that office for 6 years. 6 years showing up early. 6 years doing what responsible people are told to do. 6 years trying to prove himself through discipline, politeness, availability, reliability. 6 years hoping that if he was useful enough, patient enough, loyal enough, life would eventually notice. But every year, success felt exactly as far away as the year before. That is what broke him. Not laziness. Not lack of talent. Not lack of discipline. It was the slow realization that he had been spending his best energy walking in a direction that was never going to lead him where he needed to go. That realization is uglier than failure, because failure at least gives you an event to point to. But this is worse. This is when your life starts looking acceptable from the outside while something in you quietly begins to die. He spent the next 18 months building something from nothing. Weeks with no money. Weeks with no proof. Weeks with no visible progress. Weeks where every practical voice around him said the same thing in a different tone: turn back. And this is where most people misunderstand transformation. They think the hardest part is the work. It is not. The hardest part is carrying your own mind through the stage where nothing is confirming you. The stage where the world treats your faith like delusion. The stage where your old life is already gone, but your new life has not yet become visible enough to defend you. He did not turn back. Today his business operates in 3 countries. Not because he got lucky. Not because he was chosen. Not because life handed him some secret shortcut. He got there because he finally stopped doing the thing that had been quietly poisoning every opportunity he touched. He stopped chasing from fear. And he began practicing 5 shifts that made success stop running from him and start moving toward him. That is where we begin. 1. Stop chasing success. Let's start with the first idea, because it is also the one most people resist the hardest. Stop chasing success. That sounds wrong at first, especially in a culture that worships hustle, urgency, visibility, and noise. Everything around you teaches the same message: move faster, force harder, push louder, never pause, never breathe, never let the world think you are unsure. But there is a difference, and it is a massive one, between disciplined effort and desperate pursuit. One is power. The other is fear wearing ambition as a costume. Most people do not know when they cross that line. They think they are being committed. They think they are being hungry. They think they are doing whatever it takes. But desperation has a pattern. It looks like checking your phone every few minutes because your peace is tied to someone else's reply. It looks like changing your plan every week because the current one has not paid off fast enough. It looks like watching other people succeed and feeling your body tense, not because you hate them, but because their progress feels like evidence against your own worth. It looks like saying yes to bad deals, bad clients, bad timing, bad relationships, because something inside you is whispering that any movement is better than stillness. It is not. Some movement is just panic in motion. And panic makes people sloppy. You speak too quickly in the meeting. You explain too much when nobody asked. You agree too early because silence makes you nervous. You lower your standards to keep momentum alive. You abandon long-term leverage for short-term relief. That is what chasing does. It puts your nervous system in charge of your future. And life can feel that. Think about human relationships for a second. If someone needs your attention too much, chases your approval too hard, texts too often, reacts too emotionally, seeks too much reassurance, what happens? You pull back. Not because you are cruel. Because desperation creates pressure. And pressure repels. Success works the same way. When your entire sense of worth is riding on one outcome, you stop seeing clearly. You are no longer building. You are bargaining with your own fear. Seneca understood something most modern people learn far too late: scattered energy is a disguised form of self-destruction. He wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." That line is more than poetic. It is diagnostic. When you are chasing every opportunity, every trend, every possible opening, every person's approval, every shortcut, every new plan, you are nowhere. Your energy becomes fragmented. Your identity becomes unstable. Your decisions become reactive. And nothing meaningful is built by a person whose mind is always running ahead of their hands. There is also something darker happening in modern life that few people name honestly. Society profits from your anxiety. It wants you restless. It wants you comparing. It wants you refresh-hungry, insecure, overstimulated, and easy to influence. Because the person who is deeply at peace is very difficult to manipulate. The desperate person buys more. The grounded person chooses better. That matters. Psychology has shown again and again that the most fulfilled and self-actualizing people are deeply committed to their work without being psychologically enslaved to every immediate result. They care, but they are not consumed. They move with intention, not frenzy. That is the difference. So what does this look like in real life? It looks like doing your work with full seriousness, then stepping back instead of collapsing into obsession. It looks like preparing carefully, then entering the room without performing panic. It looks like building your business, your craft, your body, your future, without needing constant evidence that you are allowed to continue. It looks like trusting process more than adrenaline. There was a period in my own life when I thought intensity was proof of commitment. If I was not worrying, I assumed I was not trying hard enough. If I was not mentally chasing the outcome all day, I thought I was being passive. But all that did was drain my judgment. It did not make me more effective. It made me more fragile. That is what many people call ambition. But often it is just fear with good branding. So here is the shift. Work like it matters. Rest like it is coming. Move with purpose, not with panic. Success rarely runs toward the person screaming for it. It moves toward the person whose effort is stable enough to hold it. Calm builds empires. 2. Silence your doubt. Now let's go deeper, because even if you stop chasing externally, many people are still being sabotaged from the inside. What does the voice in your head say when nobody is around? Not when you are performing confidence. Not when you are posting strength. Not when you are trying to look composed in public. I mean when the room is dark. When the day is over. When there is nothing left to distract you. When your body is tired but your mind will not let go. What does that voice say? Does it say keep going, you are growing, this is hard but you are becoming someone stronger? Or does it say who do you think you are? What if you are already too late? What if everyone else can do this but not you? What if your chance has already passed? What if all your effort ends in embarrassment? For many people, that second voice is so familiar they no longer even question it. They do not hear it as doubt anymore. They hear it as truth. That is dangerous. Because doubt is not just emotional background noise. It changes your body. It changes your timing. It changes the way you enter a room. It changes the risks you are willing to take. It changes how much life you allow yourself to occupy. When doubt becomes your inner climate, your body responds as if the threat is real. Your breath gets shorter. Your shoulders tighten. Your voice loses authority. Your eye contact weakens. You become hesitant exactly where conviction is required. And then something tragic happens. You start acting beneath your actual capacity, and your smaller behavior becomes evidence for the very doubt that produced it. This is how people get trapped. Not because they lacked potential. Because they kept obeying the wrong inner narrator. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That line has been repeated so often that many people no longer feel its force. But if you really sit with it, it becomes mercilessly practical. Your doubt is an internal event. Not a prophecy. Not a verdict. Not a revelation from the future. An event. And if it is an event, it can be examined. If it can be examined, it can be challenged. If it can be challenged, it no longer gets to rule. But here is where most advice becomes useless. People tell you to be positive. To just believe. To silence negative thoughts. That sounds nice. It just does not work for long, because the brain does not trust slogans when it is under pressure. What it does trust is evidence. So when doubt says you cannot handle what is in front of you, do not answer it with fantasy. Answer it with memory. Remember the hard thing you survived. Remember the season you thought would break you but did not. Remember the room you were scared to enter and still entered. Remember the problem you had no idea how to solve and still solved. Remember the moment you kept your word when quitting would have been easier. Build a proof list. Not to flatter yourself. Not to pretend you are fearless. But to remind your nervous system that you have already done difficult things before. That matters more than most people realize. Because self-trust is not built by affirmations. It is built by accumulated evidence. I have seen people stay in jobs too small for them, relationships that drained them, routines that numbed them, not because they wanted those things, but because doubt convinced them the unknown would humiliate them. That is how doubt steals a life. Not with drama. With hesitation. It whispers, "Wait a little longer. Do not risk looking foolish. Maybe this is enough. Maybe wanting more is arrogance. Maybe now is not the time." And if you listen to that voice for long enough, you begin to confuse fear with wisdom. Do not do that. Your doubt is often just old pain trying to protect you from new possibility. Sometimes it is the voice of a parent who lived in survival mode. Sometimes it is the echo of failure. Sometimes it is the residue of humiliation. Sometimes it is the social conditioning that teaches people to stay small enough to remain acceptable. But none of that means it is telling the truth. So the next time doubt shows up, do not panic. Do not obey it. Interrogate it. Ask, what proof do you have? Ask, is this fear or fact? Ask, have I survived uncertainty before? Ask, what would I do right now if I trusted my own capacity just 10% more? Then move. Not after doubt disappears. While it is still speaking. That is how self-respect is built. Not by never feeling doubt. By refusing to kneel to it. Doubt dies when evidence speaks louder. 3. Align your actions with your words. Now we get to one of the most uncomfortable truths in this entire conversation. You cannot keep saying one thing and living another, then wonder why life does not trust you. Many people say they want success. Very few live like they are in a relationship with it. And success notices that. People say they want freedom, but structure their days around distraction. They say they want discipline, but negotiate with themselves every morning. They say they want peace, but feed their minds chaos. They say they want to build something meaningful, but spend hours every day numbing themselves with stimulation they did not choose consciously. This is not about perfection. It is about integrity. Because every time your mouth says one thing and your behavior says another, a fracture opens inside you. At first it feels small. You barely notice it. You tell yourself everyone struggles. You tell yourself tomorrow will be different. You tell yourself you are still committed even though your routine keeps voting against your goal. But slowly, repetition hardens into identity. And the deepest damage is not lost progress. The deepest damage is that your subconscious begins collecting evidence that your word means nothing. That is devastating. A person can recover from failure. A person can recover from rejection. A person can recover from bad timing. But the person who stops believing their own word loses the internal authority required to build anything that lasts. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Simple sentence. Ruthless standard. Not say it and admire it. Not say it and post about it. Not say it and collect information around it. Do what you have to do. This is where modern culture becomes dangerous again, because it gives people endless substitutes for action. Research instead of risk. Planning instead of execution. Identity language instead of difficult behavior. Content about growth instead of growth. Public intention instead of private discipline. A man says he wants to start a business. For 2 years he talks about it. He watches videos. He takes notes. He studies branding. He studies platforms. He studies timing. He studies competitors. He studies everything except his own resistance. But no offer is made. No page is built. No first step becomes real. Then one day someone asks him a mercilessly simple question. What can you do today that would make this less imaginary? That evening he builds one page of a website. Just one. Nothing glamorous. Nothing impressive to outsiders. No dramatic announcement. No evidence of mastery. But something changes in him. Because now his action and his words are finally speaking the same language. That is when momentum becomes possible. Not when you feel ready. When your behavior stops betraying your intention. Psychology has a term for the discomfort that comes when beliefs and actions do not match: cognitive dissonance. Most people resolve that discomfort in the weakest way possible. They lower the belief. They tell themselves maybe they did not want it that much. Maybe the goal was unrealistic. Maybe they are just being mature now. Maybe compromise is wisdom. Sometimes compromise is wisdom. But sometimes compromise is cowardice with adult vocabulary. You have to know the difference. There were seasons in my own life when I was saying I wanted one future while my daily behavior was clearly building another. And the worst part was not being off track. The worst part was feeling my own respect for myself slowly erode. That erosion is subtle. No one sees it from the outside. But you feel it. You feel it every time you break a promise. Machiavelli understood something uncomfortable about public life. People are often more committed to appearance than truth. That is not cynicism. That is observation. And once you understand that, you stop giving so much power to surface-level judgment. Because much of the judgment you fear is coming from people who are performing their own life just as anxiously as you are. Psychologists call it the spotlight effect, the tendency to overestimate how much other people are thinking about us, evaluating us, noticing us. In reality, most people are too busy managing their own fear, insecurity, debt, relationships, regret, and self-consciousness to monitor your every move. You are sacrificing real choices for an imaginary tribunal. And even when people do judge you, their judgment is rarely a clean reading of your reality. It is filtered through their ceiling, their wound, their envy, their caution, their fear of what your courage exposes in them. When someone says your dream is too big, that may not be wisdom. It may be autobiography. When someone says it will not work, that may not be foresight. It may be memory. When someone mocks your change, sometimes they are not evaluating you. Sometimes they are defending the version of you that made them feel safe. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me, we all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That line is almost embarrassing in how accurately it exposes the human condition. We say we want our own life, but we borrow standards from people we would never trade places with. We say we value truth, but we abandon it quickly when social discomfort enters the room. This is how people build invisible prisons. One, what will they think, at a time. I have watched people shrink themselves in conversations, relationships, careers, and entire life directions because they were trying not to disturb the comfort of people who were never going to carry the consequences anyway. That is the part you have to remember. The crowd may judge, but the crowd does not pay your emotional debt. The crowd does not live with your regret. The crowd does not wake up inside your unfinished life 10 years from now. You do. So what changes when you let go of other people's opinions? Energy returns. The energy spent rehearsing explanations. The energy spent softening your truth. The energy spent pre-defending choices that have not even been attacked yet. The energy spent editing your natural seriousness into something more harmless. All of that energy comes back. And when it comes back, your work deepens. Your voice steadies. Your presence changes. Your decisions get cleaner. People are drawn to visible conviction. Not arrogance. Not noise. Conviction. Because conviction signals something rare. This person is not asking permission to become who they came here to be. That kind of energy changes everything. Let them misunderstand. Let them project. Let them gossip. Let them reduce what they cannot yet comprehend. Their opinions have an expiration date. If you keep adjusting your life to avoid criticism, you will die approved and unfinished. Do not do that. Their opinions expire. 5. Trust the waiting period. This last secret is the one people betray when they are closest. And that is what makes it so painful. The waiting period. The season where nothing seems to be moving. The season where your effort is real but your results are invisible. The season where the outside world looks almost exactly the same, even though something costly is happening underneath. Most people interpret that stage incorrectly. They think no visible progress means no real progress. That is one of the most expensive mistakes a person can make. Imagine planting a seed and then digging it up every few days to see whether it is working. That sounds ridiculous when you say it that way. Yet people do this with their life constantly. They start something, then panic because the world has not validated it quickly enough. They build for a month, then switch directions. They commit for a season, then abandon the path because the numbers are not moving, the praise is not coming, the proof is not obvious, the identity has not paid them back yet. But underground, roots do not look impressive. That does not mean they are not everything. Your waiting period is often where your structure is being formed. Patience, restraint, discernment, emotional endurance. The ability to keep your standards in the absence of applause. The ability to continue when nobody is clapping yet. The ability to remain loyal to a process that has not become visible enough to impress anyone. Those are not small things. Those are the very qualities your future will require. The world likes to romanticize breakthrough. It rarely honors preparation. But without preparation, breakthrough destroys people. That is why some people finally get the thing they wanted and cannot hold it. Their external life arrived before their internal structure did. Winston Churchill said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts." That line matters because it places the weight where it belongs. Not on perfection. Not on timing. Not on being spectacular. On continuing. That is harder than it sounds. Because continuation is not glamorous. Continuation is waking up when you are discouraged. Continuation is showing up when nobody is affirming you. Continuation is producing effort in private while your mind is trying to bargain for escape. Continuation is refusing to call the season meaningless just because it is quiet. There were times I remember vividly when the waiting period felt like insult more than process. You work. You sacrifice. You grow. And still the outside looks unchanged. That can make even disciplined people bitter if they do not understand what the season is doing to them. So when the waiting gets heavy, ask a better question. Not, "Is this even working?" Ask, "What is this season building in me that I could not have gained any other way?" Because something is always being built. Maybe patience. Maybe thicker skin. Maybe discernment. Maybe humility. Maybe strength that no longer needs witnesses. Maybe the emotional sobriety to handle what you once thought you wanted. You may not see the roots yet. That does not mean they are not there. One day the growth will become visible. One day the outside will catch up to the inside. One day people will call it a breakthrough, as if it arrived suddenly. It did not arrive suddenly. It was being formed in silence while weaker versions of you were being stripped away. Do not dig up the seed because the ground looks empty. Do not abandon the process because the applause is late. Do not confuse invisibility with irrelevance. The waiting period is not where your dream dies. It is where your dream asks whether you are serious enough to survive becoming the person who can carry it. I trust the wait. So let's step back and gather everything clearly. Stop chasing success. Because desperation distorts judgment and repels what steadiness attracts. Silence your doubt. Because the voice inside your head becomes the posture you bring into the world. Align your actions with your words. Because self-respect is built when your behavior stops betraying your intention. Let go of what others think. Because borrowed opinions create invisible cages. Trust the waiting period. Because what looks empty on the surface is often where the deepest preparation is taking place. That is the architecture. But I do not want to end this like a list. Because this is not really about 5 tips. It is about one deeper shift. Success is not always something you chase down and capture. Often it is something that begins moving toward you once you stop poisoning your own path with fear, inconsistency, social obedience, and panic. That man from the beginning, the one who walked out of his office with nothing but a decision, would tell you the hardest part was never the work itself. It was believing before there was visible proof. It was staying loyal to what he knew in silence while the world kept asking for evidence he did not yet have. That is where many of you are right now. Not in failure. Not in irrelevance. Not at the end. You are in the invisible stage. The uncomfortable stage. The stage where your old identity is no longer enough, but your new reality has not yet fully arrived. That stage feels lonely. But it is not meaningless. And it is not punishment. It is where character is tested without witnesses. It is where people stop performing and start becoming. It is where the false parts of you begin to fall away. It is where life finds out whether you wanted the image of success or the burden of becoming someone who can hold it. That is why this matters. Because the world is full of noise. Full of posturing. Full of fragile people performing certainty. Full of systems that reward appearance before substance. But eventually, reality collects its debt. And when it does, the calm person lasts longer than the loud one. The disciplined person lasts longer than the dramatic one. The truthful person lasts longer than the performative one. The patient person lasts longer than the impulsive one. Do not envy what looks fast if it cannot endure. Build what can endure. If something in this video spoke directly to the season you are in, let it mean something concrete. Do not just agree with it. Use it. And tell me in the comments, which of these 5 are you fighting the hardest right now? Is it the need to chase? The voice of doubt? The gap between your words and your actions? The weight of other people's opinions? Or the pain of the waiting period? Be honest. Not for performance. For clarity. And if you know someone who is in that invisible stage right now, someone who is working, doubting, building, carrying more than they show, send them this video. Sometimes people do not need more advice. Sometimes they just need language for what they are surviving. If this kind of deeper Stoic thinking is the kind of content you want more of, subscribe and stay close. On this channel, we do not use philosophy as decoration. We use it as a weapon against illusion, weakness, noise, and the fake values that keep people trapped in lives they secretly resent. You are not behind because it is quiet. You are not finished because it is hard. And you are not lost just because the proof has not appeared yet. Stay the course. The pull is already happening.